This episode of Grilled is sponsored by Rationale, your leading provider in multifunctional hot food preparation equipment. Register now for a free Rationale live demo at www.rationale-online.com. Thanks for downloading Grilled by the Staff Canteen. I'm Cara, editor of the Staff Canteen, and in this episode I talk to Michelin-starred chef Sally Abe. She is the head chef at the Harwood Arms and previously worked at the Ledbury and Elystan Street. Brett Graham is the director at the Harwood Arms, and Sally explains why it's great to have him around for advice. Talking about the impact of coronavirus on the hospitality industry, Sally explains that she thinks this is an opportunity for restaurants to reset. She believes there are a lot of things wrong with the industry, including how staff were treated, working hours, and the public's perception of a career in hospitality. Now is a chance to fix some of those things. She also talks about the Harwood Arms, her role as head chef, and this year's Great British Menu. And for those who don't know, she is married to restaurant Gordon Ramsay's Matt Abe, so I find out how two chefs are coping under the same roof. So Sally, welcome to Grilled.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to have a chat with me. Obviously, the first thing that we need to talk about is coronavirus. I know everyone's sick of talking about it, but with the recent announcements with, not much, but a little bit of clarification of where things might be going, I just wanted to get your take on it. So July at the earliest is the hospitality's kind of what they're working to, maybe being able to open, obviously still with restrictions, so I don't know how difficult that's going to be. So let's talk about the fact that we may be able to open in July, and then we'll move on to some of the other things that have been announced as well.
Obviously it's all very pie in the sky as to whether we actually will be able to open anything in July, depending on the number of cases staying below, or the rate of R staying below 1, which obviously we've seen in Germany has spiked back up again as soon as they've opened.
Yeah.
So obviously there's that to bear in mind. But also I think the biggest thing for most small operators is that, if we have to have 2 meter social distancing between tables, it's just not worth opening for us. That would probably mean we'd be doing 50% occupancy, or 50% of the covers that we were doing pre-lockdown. And I'm sure, as most people that work in hospitality and run businesses know in hospitality, that it's difficult enough to make money as it is. And then trying to do it on 50% occupancy is just a no-go area. Basically, there's just literally no point in opening the doors because you're losing money before you've even got going. So I think until there is a point where we can at least begin to return to some form of normality, that a lot of businesses, the small businesses, pubs, small restaurants, there's just no point in them opening, and it's just the way it is. The margins are that small. It'd be nice to open. Of course, everybody wants to get back to work and wants to get going and wants to start working again. But until we can actually make the businesses viable, there really isn't any point.
Yeah, so you're probably, I'm guessing, more relieved to hear the announcement that furlough is going to continue rather than maybe you can open. So what are your kind of thoughts on that? So furlough's going to be extended till October, no changes until the end of July, but then they haven't been clear exactly what the changes will be between August and October. There obviously is going to be a bit more participation from employers and businesses. So how did you feel hearing that?
Yeah, obviously that's amazing news. It means that the staff's mind can be put at ease to know that they will definitely be getting money at least until the end of October, which is, extraordinary things come from the government. I think, sort of reading between the lines, they were talking about returning people part-time after July. And if there's still some form of support in the government in place, then that could certainly help. If they were doing part-time and then still getting furlough to make their wages up to 80 or 100%, that would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and as a chef, as a head chef, this is not a situation you ever thought that you would be dealing with. And obviously you've mentioned staff and furlough. Do you think you're going to be able to continue as you were and have the same amount of staff? Is that something that you worry about?
Of course, it's a big worry. We're basically just staring down a black hole at the moment. No one has the answers. I think that the general public will be cautious for quite a long time. I listened to Will Beckett speaking earlier along the same lines, and he basically said about how the sort of stages that we fell into before the lockdown started, after the government said stop going to restaurants, there was a sudden decline, and as public fear rose and decided restaurants weren't safe places, and it will be the same sort of incline to get out of that situation. It's just a case of how long that takes and which businesses will survive that, because obviously, as I said before, margins are so small on restaurant business and pub businesses that there's only a finite amount of time a restaurant can go without making any money before it goes bust.
Yeah.
So it's just about managing all of that. But what I do think that the hospitality industry as a whole now has a chance to take a long, hard look at itself and really reassess some of the things that weren't working. I think, the majority of operators and, staff and employees and everyone really, if we all are honest with ourselves, we have to admit that it wasn't really working. It was the way we were operating, the hours, the pay, the way staff are treated, the way the public views the hospitality industry. It was all broken, and I really think now is the chance for us to try and set some of that straight and try and fix some of these problems while we've got this clean slate almost. We're all off. No one, obviously there are quite a few places offering takeaway now, which is great, but for the majority we are closed, and it is giving us time for reflection, and hopefully it's going to give us a chance to rebuild and reassess what it is that we need to do to make the industry a better industry. And that's what I'd really, really like to see.
Do you think everyone in the industry has the same viewpoint as you, that it has showed a side that's not working, or do you think not everyone's on the same page?
I mean, most of the people that I'm speaking to are definitely on that page. I'm sure there are businesses that maybe don't feel that way, but I think the businesses that put their people first feel that way.
Yeah.
The ones that care about the staff and care about the industry rather than caring predominantly about the money. I mean, obviously everybody wants to make money, but for me, it's so much more than that. The industry is so much more than that. There's that saying that how do you make a small fortune? Start with a large fortune and open a restaurant. Nobody really goes into restaurants to make billions of pounds. Most people that do end up making billions of pounds in restaurants already started with millions of pounds in the first place. But for the small guys, it's about passion and love and drive and camaraderie and teamwork, and that's why we do it. I never became a chef to get rich. I became a chef because I love what I do. And I think they're the people that are now sort of trying to look to how we make this change.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting that you said that, because you did leave the industry, didn't you, for a little bit? So something obviously pulled you back. So you obviously saying that you love it. There was something that drew you back. So what was it about the industry? And did you miss it when you weren't in the kitchen?
I did. I think when I left the Ledbury, I'd been working flat out for 5 years with literally no time to come up for air. So it was nice to take that a little bit of time out. I mean, obviously I was still working with food, just not, I was working doing recipe editing and stuff like that. So it was a little bit different pace of life. But I really missed it. There's something so unique about working in a restaurant that you literally can't find anywhere else, and it's the throes of a really busy Saturday night service. You can't beat a better buzz than that anywhere, I don't think.
Yeah. And so let's talk about on a more positive vibe, away from the current situation. Let's talk about Great British Menu, because you were on that this year. Unfortunately, it did air when everyone's told not to go to restaurants, so it is a little bit a bit of a shame that's when it goes out. So I suppose my first question is, was it a bit disappointing that your year is the coronavirus year, and that's because the publicity that comes from it is great, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly bittersweet. It got aired on the Wednesday and we closed the Harwood on the Tuesday. So we were all, still completely reeling from that. And yeah, didn't really know what was going on. I went to the supermarket on the Wednesday and I just went and bought 2 bottles of champagne. And the guy in the queue behind me in the shop was like, "Oh, it looks like you're having a good time." And I was like, "Well, I lost my job yesterday, but I'm on TV tonight."
So everyone else was hoarding toilet roll and you were hoarding champagne.
Well, you've got to get your priorities straight, Corinne.
Brilliant.
But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Obviously, it was a bit upsetting, but at the same time, it's still such an amazing thing to have done and experienced. And there's only a handful of people in the country that have done that show and had that exposure. And yeah, it was certainly an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, it was really good to see some really strong women on there this year as well. Not to like bring up female male chefs, but it's good to see a really strong lineup, and I suppose yourself as well, not to feel like, oh, a woman in just because we need to have a woman in that lineup. So what were your thoughts on it this year and the talent that was there?
Yeah, I mean, there was some amazing talent in there. I mean, obviously in our round especially, going up against Niall and Dom and Alex, they were all great chefs, and they're all great guys as well. Really, really nice to work with. Very humble people. none of this crappy arrogance that I hate. But yeah, I mean, I think the standard of cooking this year was absolutely fantastic, and some of the showmanship and props and stuff that people came up with was just mind blowing. And it's actually been, the nice thing about it has actually been being able to watch the entire series. Which I've never done that before. I've watched episodes here and there, and I mean, God, it must have been 10, 12 years ago. I was actually in the background when Mark Sargent did Great British Menu, and I remember there was a shot of me like basting a piece of fish at Claridge's, and I watched that and got my parents to watch that, and then come full circle 10, 12 years later. But yeah, I mean, the standard this year was very high.
Yeah, no, it is. So, because obviously, we're in finals week now. It seems like it's gone really quickly, actually. Because it's a really long-running program, isn't it, from start to finish? So
yeah, we've been in lockdown all this time.
Oh God, don't. So, would you do it again? Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I'd definitely do it again. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was disappointed that I didn't get through, especially after getting such great scores. So yeah, I'd absolutely do it again.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about Harwood Arms. People that don't know, when you do reopen again, what can they, if they come for dinner, what can they expect from you guys? What's the menu like? What's the ambience like?
So our sort of tagline is not your average gastropub. So we are a gastropub, but we just try and do things a little differently. We don't do classic pub dishes like fish and chips. It's a little more refined than that, and we've got a real focus on game and wild food, and we use as much English and British produce as possible. So we don't use any chocolate on the menu, we don't use pasta or rice, because they're not British, of British origin essentially. So we just try and keep things as British as possible. I like to say that it's hearty food, but it's not rustic, it's hearty. I'd like to feel that people would come and have a great time, eat a great plate of food, feel full, feel sated, have a lovely bottle of wine, and then just go away happy. That's all I want, really, is just people to be happy.
Yes. I literally can't wait to be able to come and do that. And so as head chef, how long does it take you to like really settle into that role, do you think? Is it quite hard to kind of get to that level of like working as a team, but also you have to have some form of authority as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things I always say about the hardest thing about moving up through management as being a chef is you never really get any training. No one ever teaches you how to manage people, how to manage a team, how to manage a budget or a stock take or whatever it may be. You just have to kind of figure it all out as you go along. So that is I love a challenge, so I've enjoyed all of those processes, but it definitely has been incredibly challenging at points. There have been points where you're there, you're sort of questioning your own existence, like, why am I doing this to myself? But I think I'd say that it probably took me a year to really get into the swing of things. It was my first head chef job, and the difference between being a sous chef and being a head chef is huge. The responsibility is all on you. Obviously I've had amazing support from Brett and Mike and Edwin, the other owners, going forward. But it is a big lifestyle change, and I think you really have to sort of take that on board, that you don't really get the opportunity to switch off, just because you're on a day off. If something breaks or something goes wrong, or you still expect to be at the end of the phone. So that is something you just have to come to terms with, really.
Yeah. And what's Graham's role within the restaurant? Is he just kind of someone there to go to if you need him, or like how much input does he have?
Yeah, I think he's just there when I need him, really. If I wanted him to be more involved, I suppose that he certainly wouldn't mind being so, but I think he just kind of lets me get on with it, because he knows I'm quite like an independent person, and he doesn't want me to feel like he's treading on my toes. So he just kind of lets me get on with it. But I do lean on him, obviously, for support, because he's, got two incredibly successful businesses, and I'd be crazy not to, go to him for advice and support.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've worked together for a long time now. I think I've worked for Brett for over 8 years now, and I've known him for 10. And even when I wasn't working for him, we were still in contact, and he was the one that set me up with the job at Elystan Street and introduced me to Phil as well. So, he's definitely been a massive part of my career and my life.
Yeah. Does he ever get in the kitchen, or does he keep well away from you?
No, he's not allowed.
Get out.
Yeah, he did come and help us pluck grouse on the glorious 12, so that was fun.
Yeah,
when they arrived at 6 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, did he? Just make sure everything's ready.
Yeah.
So what is it, just whilst we're on him, what are his thoughts on the current situation that's going on? You obviously must have talked about it, so what has he said?
Yeah, I think, like all business owners, he's worried, that it's going to be, there's no real easy solution to any of this. There's no quick fix. This is not going to go well for anybody, really. There's no one, maybe Amazon are doing well out of it, but other than that, everybody else is going to struggle. And I think he's just looking to think of ways to sort of innovate and recreate the Ledbury and the Harwood. And yeah, we've been talking a lot about various things that we can work on. And I think he agrees that there now needs to be quite a lot of change happening.
Yeah. And so what have you been doing to keep yourself busy in lockdown? Because as you said, you have had some time to watch Great British Menu, but time is something that is not something you would associate with chefs very often. So spare time.
The first few days I was off, Matt was still working, so we closed on the Tuesday and he didn't close until the Friday night. So those first 3 days was totally mind-boggling for me. And then Matt went through the same sort of, I suppose, grieving process the week after, because he closed the week after me. And the first week or so we were messing around, saying, right, it's 11 o'clock, let's do the floor, and just joking around, try to maintain some form of kitchen normality. But then I suppose you just sort of fall into a new routine. It's been 7 or 8 weeks now. That's the longest time we've ever had off work since we started working when we were teenagers, and B, it's the longest time we've ever spent seeing each other every day. So, but it's all right, there's no divorce on the cards just yet. But we've both been volunteering at Repertorio Felix in Earls Court. So I've been doing that 4 or 5 days a week, and Matt's been doing it 3 days a week. So we're going there every day, and we're basically preparing between 200 and 300 meals a day for the homeless, for a mental health charity, for Age UK, and for the NHS. So that has been keeping us quite busy. So we've been making loads of food, and it's nice to be able to actually have the opportunity to help other people, because obviously normally we're working all the time and you very rarely get an opportunity to sort of give anything back to the community. So it has been nice to do that and meet some interesting people, and hopefully going forward we can maybe find a way to weave that into what we do, and whether it's we send a different chef down there every week and they're paid by us to go and volunteer there rather than being expected to do on the day off. I really feel that this sense of community has come together now, and hopefully we can carry that on.
Yeah, I mean, and for people listening to this who don't know, it's Matt Abe that you're married to, who is at Restaurant Gordon Ramsay. So that sounds amazing that you've been able to do that. Must be like a rewarding thing to do in such a horrible time. So
yeah, definitely, it's been great to I contacted them the day after we closed, basically, because I've done a few dinners there with Brett volunteers there once a month normally, and we've got quite a close relationship with them already, so it made perfect sense for me to go and see if they could do with some help down there.
Yeah. So have you got back to, are you like sleeping 12-hour nights and getting up at normal hours?
Yeah, it's been really nice to go to bed earlier. 21-year-old me going, what are you talking about? But no, Matt was protesting at the start about going to bed at 11 o'clock, but he's got used to it now. So 11 o'clock is bedtime. Apart from at the weekends where we've had a few drinks, but sleeping 8 hours a night is literally an absolute dream, and that's something I really, really want to hold on to going forward as well. But just having the energy to get through a whole day is such a, I suppose it's normal for most people, but for us, we normally survive on sort of 5-6 hours a night. So I think it's very important to get your sleep in.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a shock when everything goes back to normal, isn't there? Body shock.
Well, I mean, hopefully we'll be able to find a way that we don't have to go back. Maybe we can find a new normal and try and actually, work less hours and get more sleep.
Yeah, that would
crazy
be
as it sounds.
No, and so obviously you two both being chefs, living together, and like you said, it's the longest time you've spent in the same house. So how manageable is that? And do you think, is it like, oh, I need to be in the kitchen, or I need to be in the kitchen? Like, how does it? Or
we take it in turns in cooking, so we don't really tend to do it together, because you've got quite different working styles. So we just take it in turns, basically, and there's things that I prefer to cook, there's things that Matt prefers to cook. We've got a barbecue as well, a big green egg, so Matt's Australian, so loves a cheeky barbecue, so that's his domain. And then I'd like to make sort of light, fresh sort of Thai salads and things along those lines at home. So yeah, it's been fun, actually. I think the first week we had a couple of little touchy niggles at each other, but nothing serious. Now we've just got used to it.
I feel like people imagining that you're having like tasting menus every night. So.
No, I've had quite a few messages from people saying, "Oh, I wish we were quarantined with you." I mean, there have been a few. Well, I mean, obviously we eat nice food every day, because why would we make ourselves cook food? But we've only had one takeaway in this entire time, which was a meat liquor last Friday night, and it was worth it. Nice. It was worth the wait. But we're obviously eating nice food, but we're not eating restaurant food every night. We don't want to have, sometimes you just want a really simple salad, and that's what you want. And so it just depends on what we're in the mood for, really, and what we've got in the fridge, because we're very disorganized in terms of actually buying food. So sometimes we'll look in the fridge and be like, okay, so we'll have to make something out of that.
You've got champagne in the fridge by the sounds of it, so
yeah.
So fine, getting on, which is great to hear, obviously. But are you both in agreement of how the hospitality industry is going to come out of this? Because obviously you've said how you feel. Are you both on the same page on that changes and hopefully there's a new normal? Is Matt with you on that one?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely he is. I mean, obviously he works for a much bigger group, so their outlook's probably a little different to mine. I think independent businesses and big groups will obviously come out of this in their own paths. But I mean, Matt's certainly, and advocate for changing the hospitality industry, and you know, the way his kitchen has changed since he's worked there is quite profound. So
yeah, okay. And sad as it is, there is no doubt that there's probably going to be casualties because of the situation. How does that feel? Like, what do you think about that? Because, well, you know, that it's not just chefs, not just colleagues, and not just, you know, people within the industry that we know, they're friends, right? So it's quite a tough thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that it will happen, and it's heartbreaking. You know, I don't own the business that I work in, but I work very closely in running it, and obviously I know the hard work and blood, sweat and tears that go into opening your own place, and you know, people put their whole life into it, not just their money, but everything they've got in their being, and for that to all be taken away from you through no fault of your own, it's completely heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, and hopefully people will have the confidence to come back and come out, because that's really what the industry's relying on, isn't it?
Yeah, and they definitely will. You know, it's not like we're going to sit here in 5 years' time and still no one. Well, I mean, touch wood, but I doubt that we'll still be sat here in 5 years' time and no one's going to restaurants. Of course, people will go back to restaurants. People have eaten at restaurants hundreds of years and gone through wars and the Spanish flu and all the other things, and people still eat in restaurants now. I mean, it will take time, and I don't think it will look the way it looked in 2019. But maybe that's a good thing, you know.
Yeah. And aside from going back to work, what's the first thing you're going to do when they lift lockdown?
Well, I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Because I really just want to go to the pub, but if the other pubs are open, it means that my pub will be open. I'm probably be at work. But no, I mean, my sous chef has got the biggest back garden out of all of our little group of friends. So they've offered to host the first barbecue. So we'll be going there, having lots of grilled meat and lots of wine. So that's the plan.
I never realised how needy I was. Like, I didn't realise I needed so many people around me until it's taken away.
I don't think it's being needy, is it? It's just, you know, humans are, social interaction is such a massive part of our lives, and you know, that gets ripped away from you. And it's not the same, you know. I've obviously had a few Zoom quizzes and bingo, etc., and it is nice, but it's certainly not the same as actual interaction. And I think in hospitality specifically, you know, we work so closely with our teams and as part of the team, and we work, you know, you become family. It's so much more than just being a colleague. You actually become family, and you have a vested interest in other people's lives, and you probably know more about them than their partners do, because you spend so much time together, and you see them, you know, in hospitality, you see people at their very best and at their very worst, because of the, you know, varying degrees of pressure that come with the job. And I miss that. I miss all those people.
Yeah, I think you said earlier, like, it has brought out a really nice side to the industry there that maybe the public have never been aware of before. It's like everyone has really come together, so that can only be a good thing going forward, right? With recruiting people and getting people who actually are passionate and want to be in the industry. Yes,
I mean, hugely. I think the biggest thing that needs to change is the public perception of hospitality, and I hope that, you know, people seeing all the amazing things that hospitality people have been doing for the NHS and for the homeless, I hope that they'll see that and think, okay, well, you helped us, so now we'll help you, because I think ultimately what the price of eating out will go up. It has to.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure you've thought about it, but ingredients and everything is probably, the prices are gonna change quite dramatically.
Yeah, definitely. You know, the whole supply chain. I think what people struggle to realise in the general public is that you know, you can buy a steak from a restaurant for £2 or £3, but that's come from some, you know, factory farmed, you know, awful place where the price has been driven down by the supermarket and there's been no care and love. But as restaurants, we take great pride in our suppliers, and we want those suppliers to be paid a fair wage as well. You know, it's an entire chain. It's not just us. It's not just, no restaurant is out to grab people's money and do people. The reason that the food is expensive is because it's expensive, because there's real people there who have lives and who have children to feed and who have to look after this cattle in the most beautiful, humane way possible. They're not trying to, you know, cram 1 million chickens into 1 square meter. They're actually giving these chickens and cows and pigs to real life. And even the same with vegetables, you know, the way vegetables are farmed, it's a huge chain, and for everybody to get looked after, it comes at a cost.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're in contact still with your suppliers, even though obviously you can't operate at the minute. So I'm sure they're desperate as well for everything to start lifting a little bit. So what's their feedback from themselves?
Yeah, I mean, Philip Warren have done an amazing job. They've created Philip Warren on the platter. That's one of the butchers that we use, and they are selling off the aged meat that they've got and labelling which restaurant it was destined for.
Oh, okay.
So and they sold out when they put that online last weekend, so that's absolutely fantastic. Lake District farmers are hopefully starting to do a similar sort of thing in the next few weeks. I know Flying Fish are going to be reopening to do sort of home deliveries as well. So the way that these previously wholesale and restaurant suppliers have been able to spin things around, some of them, you know, in a matter of days, it's been extraordinary the way they've been able to do it. But and I think that maybe some of them will continue this afterwards. You know, they know the demand's there. I suppose before it was always a bit like, oh well, people won't buy it, it's too expensive or whatever. But you know, the demand is clearly there. And I think even going forward, you know, there's a lot of people out there that want to eat better meat and want to eat better fish at home, but they just don't know where to get it from. So, you know, that's hopefully another positive that come out of this. If less people shop at the supermarkets and go back to community and small suppliers, it can only be a positive, really.
Yeah, that's really interesting that obviously they've put on where the meat was supposed to be going. I can see like the public who are into their food would be really into that.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, I've got this, you know, brat ribeye or this Ledbury short rib or whatever it may be, and people are loving it.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good idea. So my final question, I mean, it's a tough one, but how do you see kind of the future of hospitality? You have kind of answered it by saying that you want to take these positive steps forward, but in your eyes, what is this year a write-off really, and we'll just start again next year, or you know, what's your thoughts in time scale? Because I mean, we're starting to get a little bit more clarity, but who knows, we could open and then have to shut down again, which is obviously the worst case scenario. So
yeah, I mean, I think opening and then being forced to close again would be a disaster. You know, the businesses that hadn't been put out of business the first time would certainly go out of business the second time. So I think there's definitely an element of trepidation there, and we all, you know, obviously we're trying to just follow the advice from the government, and you know, just I think we just need to take it slow, and I think we need to open at a pace that feels right for us, and individual businesses will obviously make that decision as and when they get the information from the government, really. So it's obviously, you know, how long is a piece of string and crystal ball kind of stuff at the moment. But, you know, I do believe there's a way back. I do hope that it will look a lot brighter than it does now. And yeah, that's all I know at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I like that you said there'll be a new normal, because people keep talking about getting back to normal, but will we ever go back to the way things were? I'm not sure. So I don't want to. I want it to be better. It can be better. It must, you know, we must be able to find a better way. Yeah, and I suppose you have to learn from what's happened as well. I mean, hopefully we'll never have to deal with anything like this again in our lifetimes, but I suppose that's important, isn't it, to learn from things like this?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But, you know, the past is in the past and you can't change it, but you can learn from it and move forward and make a better future.
Yeah, and I bet you can't wait, obviously once it's safe and you're good to go, I bet you can't wait to get back in that kitchen.
I can't wait, no. I'm raring to go.
Chomping at the bit. I bet all your team are as well.
They are, yes, they certainly are.
Yeah, and have you kept in close contact with all of your staff as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, we've got a WhatsApp group, so I will drop them a message probably once or twice a week just to say, hey, how everyone's doing, you know, update them on anything I've seen on the news. And We actually did a little mobility class on Zoom the other day, so it's something that we normally do in the restaurant. So we did that with Ollie on Zoom, which was quite nice to see everyone. It was really nice to see everyone actually, because obviously I haven't seen any of them since lockdown started, so even just seeing them on camera was quite nice.
Yeah, no, I bet. I mean, it's so important to keep those relationships still there, isn't it? So
yeah, definitely, yeah.
And it's not just obviously face to face, but mental health wise as well. That's something that's coming up quite a lot. It's such a stressful time, isn't it? So anything you can do to kind of ease any worries that your staff have, or anyone that you work with, and that's important to do.
I think the biggest piece of advice that I've sort of had to take heed of myself, as well as giving to other people, is that it's not a productivity contest. If you spend the whole day in your pajamas eating ice cream, watching Netflix, then who cares? It's not like you purposely took this time off to do something, or learn a language or whatever it may be. This is a pandemic. There's no one's fault, so don't feel bad if you don't feel like doing something one day, just because you've seen on Instagram that everybody else is learning French or Spanish or making sourdough and you're not. Who cares? Just everyone has their own pace, and you just have to roll with that, basically.
Well, sometimes it's nice to have forced time off, because none of you would have ever taken this time. So
yeah, exactly. It's nice to catch up on sleep and get some sun.
Yes. Yeah, no, definitely. A garden tan is always nice. So brilliant. Well, thank you so much for talking to me, Sally. It's been great. And I will, I'm sure, speak to you again soon. And fingers crossed that we can all get back to some normality, where we have day-to-day lives as we remember. That would be great, wouldn't it? So
yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks very much, Cara.
Thank you. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this interview, and if you have any comments, feel free to tweet us or comment on the post. We're making all of our interviews available to download. And finally, if you like what we do, whether it's our podcast or our videos or even our features, please head over to our Patreon page and support us there. This episode of Grilled is sponsored by Rationale, your leading provider in multifunctional hot food preparation equipment. Register now for a free Rationale live demo at www.rationale-online.com.